Hello, and welcome to another Tableau training tutorial. Today, we're going to be talking about your Tableau workspace. The workspace is what is provided to you in the user interface whenever you're generating data visualizations. Now, let's get there. To get there, let's open the sample Superstore data source. So if you're following along, that should be available to you. Now, from here, what I would like to do is just talk about the whole layout. And we can dive into things, but I'm not going to get too granular. Instead, this is mostly focused on just understanding the workspace a little bit better. At the very top, you can see your workbook name. Now, if you want to change your workbook, you can save it, save as, or you could simply rename the workbook and then open the file again. Here is your card shelf. You've got columns and you have rows. Now let's talk a little bit about what those will do for you. I will double click on order date and it automatically sends it to columns. Now let's double click on cells. Cells threw it into the marks card and that's okay. However, I'd like to show you what happens when it's here. Notice it generated a visualization automatically. That's because the marks card is set to automatic. Now the columns and shelf card can be used in various ways. Mostly, I want you to understand, and the takeaway of this is how you generate your data visualization inside of your worksheet. Now, let's talk about the toolbar inside of Tableau Desktop. The toolbar is from left to right, all of these buttons and icons. Now, let's go ahead and dive in a little bit. However, I want to tell you, I'm not going to get too granular, and instead, I will leave a link to a Figma where I've documented every single button and exactly what it does. This is your undo button and redo button. Control Z also will be an undo and Control Y is a redo. So let's do a Control Z and a Control Y. Perfect. And as you see, it went from the marks card, the sum of cells, to the rows shelf. Next is saving. By saving, you're simply clicking this button and then it'll generate this if it's the first time you've ever saved it before, which is allowing you to name the workbook. We will call it Lots of Fun. Now we have our Lots of Fun workbook name, and let's dive back into our toolbar. The next button is a new data source, also Control D. Let's see what that looks like. You're probably familiar with what this looks like whenever you're on the start page. However, now you can see what it looks like inside a Tableau Desktop. This allows you to pause the updates coming from the data source. This can be a significant help if you're clicking around in something that might potentially have a really low or slow load speed. This slow load speed can be alleviated and you can continue making edits without anything updating. And you simply just click on this. And also, if you're new to Tableau and somebody has this already paused, it would be helpful if they had already told you about that. However, if you're unfamiliar and it looks like this might be paused, then click on the play button. All right, let's keep moving along. This is how you can generate new sheets. You have access to a new worksheet, new dashboard, and new story, and those will live down here where your sheets live, similar to Excel. Next, we will look at this button here. This will allow me to duplicate. Now, I can also duplicate by right-clicking and duplicate. However, it's giving you this button to allow you to quickly duplicate things within your toolbar. Below that, we can delete, and let's just take a peek at what this will do. It looks like a delete, but it's actually called clear sheet, and it will delete everything within. And let's hit Control Z and see how that works. Very cool. Also, the dropdown allows you to do other types of clearing or deletions, and you can kind of comprehend what that already will do for you. Next, let's look at what can swap the things and the values that are in your shelf. So in our shelves here, let's maximize this a little so it makes a little bit more sense. Very cool. And then we can swap it back. Next is sorts. What I recommend whenever using these two buttons, click on what you want to sort and then click the sort. Next, we will look at highlighting. Now you can disable workbook highlighting. And to tell you the truth, not a lot of people play with the highlighting feature, so this button usually goes unclicked. Inside of Tableau, natively, this particular visualization is not showing the labels. And if we want to show those labels, they have this available and it says show mark labels. Once I click it, you can see I have labels, and I can also come in here and remove the labels as well. I find myself using the label button within the marks card. However, when I first started, I definitely use this button a lot too. The reason for that is because when I'm within the marks card, this is when I'm doing the labeling. This is when I'm editing my labels of the marks that are being visualized in my worksheet. This here is an axes fix. What that means is it's now fixed to the size. I can open it and you can see it says fixed end, fixed start. Now let's close this out, go back before we had clicked on this, which by the way, this is also a nice way to see what's happening on your visualization at a quick glance. However, you can also see it on the actual axes itself. But if somebody had, say, hid that, then it might be a little bit more difficult to understand. So now you know where it lives. But let's look at it with it deselected. Notice that Tableau is automatically creating the range for the y-axis as opposed to it being fixed. So you can also go in and make your edits here. However, that might not be relevant today. Now let's turn off the labels and move on. This is a really cool feature that a lot of people, I feel, might not know about, and especially when you're new. But it becomes a highly used tool. So standard is allowing Tableau to automatically fit in size, fit width, fits width from left to right, fit height, up and down. Notice we lose the left to right, and then entire view. I believe you'll be using entire view quite a bit. However, if you are a little lost and you're not sure, be sure to play around with this a little bit until it makes more sense. The next one, this is a button that I truthfully do not click on a lot. However, it's got a lot of different features in here, a lot of different things that you can click on. You can reset your cards, you can open the caption, you can open a summary, a lot of things that you might not need. However, it's definitely cool to know where those things live. You can also right click and gain access to the same menu. I was really surprised to see that this button was even available because no one ever showed it to me in the beginning. However, when I generated the left to right toolbar and all of the documentation inside of Figma, that's when I started to realize that, oh wow, this is another location to maybe get my marks back. And also it's available within this right click. So it's up to you to find what you like the most. I'm a fan of right clicking in order to gain access to those particular things. Like we can turn the caption off and the summary off. The same thing can be done here. Then this is a presentation mode. However, I want you to try this. Before you click this button, do F7 on your keyboard. That is going to teach you something. You're ingraining a practice into your development. And as you continue to ingrain these macros, then you will run away from having to waste a countless amount of time moving your mouse, clicking buttons. Learn those macros. And also you can highlight to see what those macros are. F7, here's some other macros that are highlightable and visible to you. Then last, certainly not least, is a button to share the entire workbook. It's automatically suggesting Tableau Public. It's also available for Tableau Online and Tableau Server. Tableau Server being the IT implemented server that you install on a server that you own. Tableau Online is the cloud version of Tableau Server. However, it's not as customizable. And last is Tableau Public. I want to make a mention. You should not be sharing your customers' data or your internal data on Tableau Public. And if you're ever going to share anything on Tableau Public, make sure it's publicly available data and not your data at your company. If this portion of this is confusing, I highly recommend speak to your Tableau Server or Tableau Online administrator, or maybe just an IT director. Make sure that you are not sharing information that should not be shared on the internet so that you can keep your job. All right, this is another button. I find whenever you're new at Tableau, this can be very valuable and it can be extremely helpful. However, if you don't know how to generate those things by changing your marks card over here, then you can also get a little behind. I find people leverage this to the point of no return, and they get a little lost in how the product actually generates visualizations. I highly recommend to just turn it off, and if you need to use it, then okay. I really like that text click button. Everything else is a little too much from my perspective, and you really don't need to be clicking around here as opposed to learning how to generate things within your Marks card. So it's up to you. You can be a person that likes this automatic click, click, click. Also, you might not like that in the future. And I've found that what happens is it'll take your shelf, your columns, and your rows, throw things around because it's trying to generate what you're clicking. However, sometimes it'll throw something around and it might not make sense to you as to why that's happening. Try to use Show Me as a tool to train you on how to generate things inside of Tableau. Don't make it be your crutch. I'm not saying that this is a calculator in math. What I am saying, you should learn how to build things in your Marks card because it's faster. And then you can be more deliberate as opposed to guessing and hoping that things click and clack. And like this particular one, scatter plot. You should know how to do a scatter plot. This does teach you though, so that can be very beneficial. However, just don't make this your crutch. I think I've explained that enough. Very good. This is the toolbar inside of Tableau Desktop. Now let's talk about the view. The view is this area here where visualizations can live. This is also called Viz. This is also called where your charts go. And this is also called a canvas. So there's a lot of different ways to term these things, just so you're aware that a lot of people have lots of interesting buzzwords for you to learn. The product though, as a whole, this is your canvas. This is where visualizations will live. This button right here, a part of your toolbar, is called the start page. So if you need to get to the start page, it's available, and you can also click to get back. The left side here is called a sidebar. If you're interested in learning more about the sidebar, please look at the link in the description that takes you to Figma. Here, I've documented everything quite a bit, and you can easily dive in as much as you need to. At the very bottom left, this is the data source click. Now I can get to the data source by using this button, and I can also double click here to get to the data source page. Now, I would like to jump back to a visualization and show at the very bottom, you'll see that these values are summarizing what's happening in the viz. Now this is very helpful because seeing where the number of marks are available means that you can always fall within a best practice. One best practice that I like to recommend for you is to avoid generating over 30,000 marks. After 30,000, things are going to start getting a lot slower. And if you're looking at millions of marks, boy, that's a lot for Tableau to manage. Also, it's a lot for someone to see. Notice we have 4 marks. When I click on one, it says 1 of 4 marks has been selected, which is great. And last, certainly not least, it does a summarization of the cells. Now, if we switch it to average, you can see it does now the average of cells, which can be beneficial. You can also get the same value by highlighting, and that's a good way for you to check. And the last piece that we'll be discussing in this video are sheets. Sheets are located here in the bottom. You can generate more by clicking these buttons, and you can also follow along what these sheets, dashboards, stories, and worksheets are all about in an alternative video. And that is all today. I'm very excited to see what you are going to start creating with this knowledge. Have a good one.